Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. प्रभुपाद की वंदना श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय गौ प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji is just coming. Prabhuji asked to recite the verse. We are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, 75 chapter, verse number 36. Tatra duryadhano mani, Tatra duryodhano mani, Parito vritarabhirinibra, Kirita malinyāvisat, Asi hasta shipam rusha. तत्र दुर्योधनो मानि परितो भ्रातृभिर्नृपा किरीटामालिन्याविशद असि हस्तक्षिपं वृषा तत्र दुर्योधनो मानि परितो भ्रातृभिर्नृपा किरीटामालिन्याविशद असि हस्तक्षिपं वृषा.
Malinyavishad Asihasta Kshipandrisha.
Word to word meaning. Tatra, there, Duryodhana, Duryodhan, Mani, proud, Paritah, surrounded, Bhratrabhi, by his brothers, Ripa, O king, Kirita, wearing a crown, Mali, and a necklace, Anya Visat, entered, Parit Ashitah, sorry, sorry, a sword, Hastaha, in his hand, Shipam, insulting the doorkeepers, Rusha, angrily. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada.
Followers of Prabhupada. Followers of Prabhupada. This is not by Prabhupada.
Translation and purport by followers of Srila Prabhupada. Proud Duryodhan, holding a sword in his hand and wearing a crown, and necklace, angrily went into the palace in the company of his brothers. O king, insulting the doorkeepers as he entered. Srila Prabhupada writes that Duryodhan was always in an envious and angry mood, and therefore, on a slight provocation, he spoke sharply with the doorkeepers and became angry. Hare Krishna. So, we'd like to welcome for today's Srimad Bhagavatam class, we'd like to welcome His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhuji. So, we welcome by once chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare.
Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधार श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. Dear Lord, please guide us all so that we can understand your plan for us and participate in that plan intelligently and wholeheartedly. Hare Krishna. I'm grateful to be here with all of you today. Apologies for the delay. So today morning, I'll be discussing. Am I audible to everyone? Behind also? Clearly? Okay. Okay, yeah, increasing it. So, today morning, I'll discuss on the topic. Where is the box? Okay. Am I audible clearly now? Okay. So, I was recently asked a question, and I felt it's a very important question which many of us may have. So, I'll be discussing that today. That how much does destiny control us? So, if somebody makes a bad choice or somebody falls down, can somebody's fall down also be considered due to destiny? So, now destiny we understand is related with our past karma. But is destiny also controlling our present karma? Can by destiny somebody be doomed to be a bad person and therefore continue to keep suffering? So broadly, so we understand that destiny determines our situations, but does destiny control our decisions? Do we have free will, and to what extent do we have free will? So we all see around ourselves that there are people who do bad things. In general, for us, we can say there are good people and there are bad people. And there are actions or things we can say. There are good people, the actions that people do. Normally, we consider that, is it visible here for everyone? Can all of you see also? So normally we expect that good people will do good things and bad people will do bad things. Now, if we consider now, there are two ways that problems come up. What if good people do bad things? So, why do good people do bad things? And conversely, is it possible for bad people to do good things? That means, can bad people become good? So, first of all, is there a category like good people and bad people? Or are there only good actions and bad actions? And there's no such thing as all people are good and only there's actions are good or bad. So, the section we are discussing here is the 10th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And here, Duryodhan has come to Indraprastha. I don't think I need that too. Okay. So, Duryodhan has come to Indraprastha for the Rajasuya Yajna. And when he has come for this particular Yajna, he is observing that actually the Pandavas are immensely prosperous. In fact, his entire plan has backfired. He wanted to ruin the Pandavas, destroy the Pandavas. And he tried various schemes. He manipulated his father, by which his father gave a barren wilderness to to the Pandavas, but they have converted that into a magnificent metropolis, better than his own city. That is unbearable for him. And then he decides, after the Rajasuya is over, to stay on. And when he stays on, what happens is being described. So the way we will be discussing is, there's a philosophical theme we'll discuss. And within that philosophical theme, we'll focus on the Mahabharata storyline. We'll discuss about the interactions between Duryodhan and Krishna primarily, but we'll go over incidents in Duryodhan's life, broadly speaking. And this same theme I'll be continuing in the afternoon class also, where we'll focus more on the life of Karna. So at this point, when good people do bad things, can it be said it's due to destiny? And if bad people want to do good things and they fail to do good things, can it be attributed to destiny? Destiny has made a particular person in a particular way, and that's why they are doing things like that. So these are the questions we will explore. In the Bhagavad Gita 16th chapter, Krishna says that there are two kinds of people. Dvau bhuta sargau lokesmin daiva asura evacha. So there are some people who are wise and there are some people who are otherwise. So we could say broadly there are people in these two categories, but also we can say that we ourselves are sometimes wise and sometimes otherwise. Sometimes, especially when we are giving advice to others, I feel as if somebody should record what I'm speaking. Maybe I should write a book. But when we are provoked, at that time, we get so agitated and go out of control that we end up speaking and doing things that we can't even believe that I spoke like that. I did like that. So, so it's interesting, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, the chapter 16 is not called divine and demoniac people. It is called divine and demoniac nature. Daiva asura sampad vibhaga. So, the understanding here is that there is a divine nature and there is a demoniac nature. Now, it is for us to choose. We can be in the demoniac nature and we can go further into it, or we can come out of the demoniac nature. We can come into the divine nature and we can go further into the divine nature. So it's almost like the way, so I'll talk about this in two different ways before we move ahead. We could say that if there is light and there is shadow, then Krishna Surya Sama, Maya hai andhakar. Jahan Krishna, tahar nahi Maya adhikar. So the idea is that we could say that divine and demoniac natures are like regions. Like some region has light, some region does not. So we can choose to be in the divine nature or we can choose to be in the demoniac nature. So this conception of nature is the idea that nature is something which is pre-existing. So now this idea that there are these dual natures within humanity is something which is talked about across cultures, across traditions, across religions, even in even in fiction, say popular fiction. For example, Star Wars, there is the idea of the dark side, the bright side. So the idea is someone who has gone over to the dark side. That means that person has become evil. That person has become cruel. So now this is one way of understanding it, that there are these two pre-existing natures and we can choose which nature we want to be. Now, of course, it's not that simple. Why? Because these are not like convenient regions. Like if you are in India, you are in divine nature. If you go to Pakistan, you go into demoniac nature. It is not like that. So it is, but the idea is this conception helps us to understand something, that our choices will determine our nature. The choices we make will determine the kind of nature we will have. So no metaphor can actually convey spiritual truths precisely. They are all metaphors. Whenever we use them, they are indicative. None of them are fully descriptive. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu calls this as the Shakha Chandra Nyaya. So they are indicative, they are not descriptive. So it's not exactly like that, but we get some sense of it. Shakha Chandra Nyaya is the child is not able to look at the moon. The child is always habituated looking this way. The mother says, "Can you see that tree? Can you see that branch? Can you see that next branch? Can you see the moon in between?" "Yeah, I can see it." So that is the moon. "Oh, I'll climb up that branch and I'll catch the moon." "No, you won't be able to catch it." So the two branches are pointers to the moon. They indicate where the moon is. But it's not that the moon is exactly over there. So when we use metaphors, they help us to understand. So the region metaphor indicates that we can choose where, by our actions, even by our external actions, we can choose whether we'll go more into the divine nature or more into the demonic nature. Now, another way to understand this is that the divine and the demoniac, they are both, they're not just regions, but they are forces. So it's like there is the divine force within us and the demoniac force within us. We can use the word force or pull, or when we use the word conditioning or impressions, often that we use the word impressions, that might convey the idea of passivity. Okay, something is impressed inside us, but that pushes us. So a more contemporary understanding can be, this is like programming inside us. So both of these kinds of programmings are there inside us, and it is for us to choose which programming we go along. It's like somebody has a TV in front of them and there are two channels only two channels, they can choose this one. So like that, now within each channel, you could say there are multiple options, but it's like broad streams of channels, broad categories of channels. So divine and demoniac, they're not just regions, they are like conditionings inside us, which prompt us in particular directions. Now, in some people, one of the conditionings might be much stronger. In the other person, the other might be much stronger. So now, why am I talking about this particular incident? To address the question of, can destiny determine or control our present karma? So if somebody is short-tempered and hurts others terribly, they say, oh, this is my destiny has made me short-tempered. And if you are feeling hurt, it is by your destiny, your own past karma is coming to you through me. Can I say like that? No, that would not be valid. That is what in English there is a word called rationalize. When we rationalize, what do? We tell rational lies. So when we rationalize means to give a more acceptable reason for a less acceptable action. If somebody is sleeping in japa, Prabhu, why are you sleeping? No, I was in samadhi. So if a husband has promised his wife to stop smoking, and the wife comes into the room of the husband and there's smoke all around. Why are you smoking? Actually, I was not smoking. The room was very cold. I just wanted to make it warmer for you. So this is rationalization. So in the peace proposal, in the Shanti Dut, when Krishna goes, at that time, one of the arguments that Duryodhan gives is that his destiny, nature has made me this way. The creator has made me this way. And why are you blaming me for my actions? I am simply acting according to my nature. If there is anyone to be blamed for my actions, it is the creator to be blamed. So basically he was telling Krishna, you are to be blamed for my actions. Krishna is telling him, don't fight. And he's saying, don't antagonize the Pandavas. And he's saying, if I am antagonizing them, it is because of the nature you have given. Now, of course, Duryodhan never really accepted Krishna as God. So that's what not he was directly saying. But essentially, he was saying like that. So why are we discussing this particular incident of Duryodhan being in the Maya Sabha, the palace of illusion? Because this illustrates one particular point about what destiny controls and what destiny does not. So here, when Duryodhan is staying on in the palace of illusion, he's observing and he's irritable. He is snapping at the attendants over there. And the next verse will describe how he slips and he mistakes a place where there is water to be normal ground, and he slips and he falls. Now, when he slips and falls, at that time, there are the Pandavas assembled over there. There are the queens, the ladies, they're all assembled there watching. And it happens that when he slips and falls, they see it all. Sometimes when we fall, it's embarrassing. And somebody slips and falls, you ask them, okay, are you hurt? He says, well, nothing except my pride is hurt. That means it's embarrassing, are you so clumsy? Can't you just walk properly? So now normally, if somebody slips and falls, we would be concerned. We would want to help that person get up and we would be concerned, are you injured or something? Would someone else laugh at that person? Because there are people who would laugh, but that is not very cultured behavior. If somebody is slipping and falling and people laugh at it, yes, sometimes college kids may do like that, sometimes uncultured people may do like that. But here, what happens is, it is described the Pandavas and the ladies that are there, they laugh. Now, men, when they are interacting with each other, often men make fun of each other. That's just ribbing, and then that is that is not considered so hurtful. But for the male ego to see a woman laugh at them, that is very painful. It's like if a man can laugh, make a woman laugh, a man thinks I'm very clever. I made her happy and I'm so clever. But if you find that the woman is not laughing with him, is laughing at him, then that's very hurtful. So, at one level, we could say that the Kaurav Pandavas and the ladies over there, their laughing was it a bit uncultured? And that naturally hurt Duryodhana. And then, now there is a slight difference in the narratives in the Mahabharata and the Bhagavatam. And we will try to make sense of the narrative also. That so in the Bhagavatam it is described that even Draupadi laughed, and now Yudhishthir tried to silence them. Don't laugh. And Yudhishthir tried to restrain them, and Krishna restrained Yudhishthir. So now it is that it seemed as if Krishna wanted to provoke Duryodhana. Krishna wanted to agitate and anger Duryodhana. And Duryodhana felt immensely humiliated. Now, of course, Yudhishthir immediately instructed attendants to go to him and help him to get up and try himself. But Duryodhana was enraged. And when he went back, his envy became even more. He said, I have to destroy the Pandavas. No matter what happens, I am going to destroy them. And eventually, the horrendous situations in the Asat Sabha, in the gambling match, in the Kuru assembly unfolded, in which the Pandavas were defrauded of their kingdom and Draupadi was dishonored. Although the disrobing attempt was not successful, but still, even the attempt to disrobe was itself a great dishonor. So, those events unfolded. Now, so was Duryodhana getting provoked? And was Duryodhana doing what he did? Was it destined? Now, this thing happened to me, therefore I did this. And this thing Krishna did. So therefore, Krishna is responsible for my actions. Now, generally when we use the word destiny, it can be used in many different senses. But broadly speaking, destiny refers to the things beyond our control. The things beyond our control that happen to us. That's often said to be the will of destiny. Suppose we have to go and catch a flight for some urgent meeting, and then suddenly heavy rains come and the flight itself gets cancelled. Now we just cannot go, we are trapped at that particular place. So that's just beyond our control, and generally that's what is referred to as destiny. So now we can say that the things beyond our control, the way they happen, are ultimate. Even the things beyond our control, they are in Krishna's control. So if they are in Krishna's control, then is Krishna making them happen? And if those actions trigger us to do certain things, then is Krishna responsible for those actions? So let's look at a bit of a context to understand this. So basically, there are three things over here. There is Duryodhan provoked. You can say Duryodhan humiliated. This is the incident. And after that, then comes Duryodhan's revenge. So now, when this particular humiliation happened, and then he decided to seek revenge. So let's look at what happened before this. So if we look at an incident only within that incident, we get some understanding, but often it is an incomplete understanding. So, say if I am very polite to someone, I'm polite and kind and gentle, and then that person is annoying and rude and irritable, then my question will be, why is this person like this with me? But then I may find that actually it is that it's possible that in the past I was rude to that person. And because I was rude to that person in the past, that's why that person is cold with me now. So when there is a particular action and there is a result of that action, this is the broad understanding of karma. There's action and result. While this is true, but while this is correct, it is correct, not complete. Action leads to reaction, action leads to result. But the fact is that when we get result, quite often the result is a combination of past action and present action. So what we do in the present. So right now I am being polite to you, but in the past I was rude to you. And that's why when you are behaving with me, you may not be very polite with me. Now the point is that past and present actions combine together to elicit a particular reaction from others or to put us in a particular situation. Now sometimes it could be that this is 50, this is 50. Both of them contribute equally. Sometimes it could be that the past is 90, present is 10. Sometimes it could be the present is 90, the past is 10. Now, is it possible that you could say the present is 0 and the past is 100? And is it possible that the past is 0 and the present is 100? So, the exact combination of how much a past action contributes and how much present action contributes, that can vary. So, for example, if I put my hand on an object, some object that is hot, maybe there is some cooking pan which has been heated and it is kept right there, or some object that has been heated for some person, heater is there, and put my hand over there. I don't know it is hot, and my hand gets scalded, gets burnt. I could say, okay, that was my hand. I put it there, the action and the reaction. But suppose there's some like room heater, and it has an open frame, and say my hand that time happens to be wet, and I put my hand over there, the suffering might be much more. Suppose there is some water, and I don't notice the water, and I slip and I fall. So we could say, okay, I was inattentive, I fell. So it's action, result. But suppose I slip and I fall, and where I fall, there happens to be a sharp stone behind. That sharp stone hits my head, and I get brain hemorrhage. And I get into a coma and I paralyze for several years. So now we may say that one slipping, that shouldn't lead to such a terrible thing. So in that case, we could say the present action might be contributing only 5 or 10. If that present action led to such a severe reaction, then that means a significant amount of past karma is also involved. There's one devotee in America, he told me that, Krishna is very merciful to us, and Krishna protects us when we try to serve. I said, yeah, that is true, but why are you telling me this? What do you mean by this? Is there something in mind? He said, yes. I had to go for Mangalarti Seva in the temple, and the previous night there was a late night program, so I was very sleepy. And I somehow woke up, and I got into my car, and while driving the car, I fell asleep. Now, in America, the country is quite large, the population is not that much. So often the roads are quite smooth, and especially morning time, not much traffic. So he said, I didn't realize, but from my home to the temple, almost the entire region I was sleeping. And somehow, when I woke up, I noticed that I was right near the temple. So he said, because my desire to serve Krishna was so sincere, so Krishna protected me. I said, Krishna protected you. That can be a valid conclusion, but don't make this a habit. So the idea is sometimes we might do something terrible. Sleeping while driving is actually more dangerous than even drinking and driving. And sometimes we might do something terrible and there might be no reaction to it. But we shouldn't think this is a pattern and this will happen all the time, isn't it? So in this case, if we put aside the Krishna factor, a reasonable conclusion to make is that yes, maybe some past positive karma was there, because of which the present action did not lead to such a severe reaction. It could have led to a far more severe reaction. It didn't happen. So what it means is that we could have another possibility is that in the present I am doing something worth minus 100, but then from the past plus 100 comes, and therefore what I get is 0. So the past and the present combine often in unpredictable ways. But let's look at that situation where the past seems to be 100 and the present seems to be 0. Then that means we have done nothing, but somebody just becomes our enemy, and that person seems to be out to destroy us. So is this because of past karma? And is it that we have no role to play over? So when Duryodhana was humiliated like this, was it that his humiliation was determined by past karma? And that's how the Pandavas act. So not necessarily. If you look at this sequence, before Duryodhana's humiliation, Duryodhana had persecuted the Pandavas. Isn't it? He had tried to kill Bhima first. He had tried to burn the Pandavas in Varnavata. He had tried to cheat the Pandavas by having them given a barren half of them. Not only that, after that, Duryodhana had prolonged his stay. See, everybody after the Rajsuyagya left, and he said, I want to stay on because I want to see the Maya Sabha. This was completely unnecessary and unsafe. It's like somebody is a recovering alcoholic and they go to a party, a corporate party, a corporate dinner is there, which is in a bar. Now that itself is dangerous. They may relapse. But after the party gets over and everybody else goes back, and they say, I want to stay on, I want to see how this bar is constructed. That is self-destruction. So all the guests who had come for the Rajsuyagya had been given a proper guided tour of the Maya Sabha. It's like if we inaugurate a new temple and we have temple inauguration, then all the guests who come, we will have a VIP tour for them to show them all the features of the temple. So there was really nothing for him to see. So his decision to stay on was his. The Pandavas were courteous enough to let him stay. See, Duryodhana was so brazen that he acted as if he had done nothing. Now, Bhima knew that it was Duryodhana who had tried to poison him. The Pandavas knew through Vidura that the whole Lakshagraha had been created by Duryodhana. So such a person who has tried to assassinate and destroy them, that person is choosing to stay on in the Pandavas' home. And it is the Pandavas' courtesy, hospitality, that they are letting him stay. But not only the person who has tried to hurt us, and not just hurt us, destroy us, that person is staying at our house. But there also, that person is putting on a lot of airs. that person is acting arrogant. So here it describes Kiriti. Now naturally he would wear a crown, a throne, sorry, a crown, because he is a prince. But the point of using the word Kiriti over here is that he was putting on a lot of airs. He was acting as if he was bigger and better and greater than what he was. Like some people, they may not be very learned, but they act as if they are very learned. They can use a lot of bombastic words and they can create a pretense that they're very clever. See, nowadays with AI coming up, what is happening is anybody who has to write any answers, write any email or write any message. So quite often they can just use AI to write. And in America as well as in India, in college applications, people would be asked to write essays about why they want to join a particular college, what is their vision. So now universities are focusing much more on the oral interviews, because you can get AI to write very impressively, but when your actual interview comes up, then what happens? I'm working with some publishers. I was talking just yesterday with a publisher, and he was telling me that now they are considering that when an author gives a draft, they are thinking that their editor should interview the author. Actually, have you written the book? And or have you just got AI to write the book for you? So if AI has written the book, then what happens? Then you will not be able to answer anything about the book. So the thing is, sometimes if we know that somebody is pretending to be very clever, they're acting very clever, and then say in a class, they are asked a question, and that question exposes their ignorance. You're putting on such a pretense of being clever. Now your ignorance has been exposed. Your show off, that you are a show off, has been exposed. So some people may laugh at that. Now that laughing is not out of malice. That laughing is not out of hatred toward that person. But that laughing serves you right. You were pretending to be far bigger than what you are. Now, as you say, pride cometh before a fall. So we could say from a pure human culture perspective, the Pandavas' laughter might be considered inappropriate. But in the broader context of how Duryodhana had been conducting himself, it was understandable. Now, having said that, now what about Krishna's actions? Now, Krishna not stopping Yudhishthira from stopping others from laughing, or Krishna stopping Yudhishthira from stopping others to laugh. So, how do we understand that? See, there are two different things over here. That when we have anarthas inside us, now we can say the anarthas have to be removed. That's if somebody has excessive lust, somebody has excessive greed, they have to be removed. That is true. But before they can be removed, first they have to be recognized. Their presence has to be recognized. And after it's recognized, then, oh, this is so serious. Suppose we tell someone, you're a short-tempered person. Says, no, I'm not short-tempered. And then, if that person is in denial, then they will not even work to actually do anything. So sometimes putting a particular person in a situation where their anarthas become manifested can be good for them. So, see, all of us have anger. But generally, even when we have anger, that anger is within some boundaries. So, for example, if you're angry, sometimes we may just not talk. We may just become silent. We may give silent treatment to somebody. Just refuse to talk with, or just talk with grunts. Or sometimes we may raise our voice. Now, okay, this is not good in the culture society, but we might do that. Now, somebody might use swear words. What we say, galis. Somebody might use obscenities. Especially in polite society, that is not acceptable. Now, somebody uses their fists to hit someone. That is far more of a problem. Someone takes out a knife. Somebody finds a gun. Say if the President of America or President of Russia, they get angry, they can nuke another country. Isn't it? So now, anger may be there in everyone, but in general, our anger, even if it is expressed, it needs to be within some boundaries. And if it, generally we say this person has a bad temper or you have some anger issues, what that means is when you get angry, you go beyond acceptable boundaries. Now, we may not be able to prevent getting angry. Life is difficult, life is provocative, you all get angry. But when we get angry, what do we do? How far do we go? That indicates that, okay, maybe you have some anger issue and you really have to do something about it. Maybe you have to do some anger management course, you have to do some counseling, you have to do some purification. So, sometimes exposing a person to the extent that they go to when they get provoked is helpful to get them out of denial. So, if you look at Krishna, what he did to Duryodhan, the same thing Krishna did to Indra. In fact, Krishna actually did much more to Indra. Duryodhan was just being laughed at, and Krishna let it happen for a little more time. Now, Krishna did not tell you this, oh, don't give him any assistance, don't let him recover. If you see, on the other hand, Krishna deliberately provoked Indra. What happened is that Indra Puja is supposed to happen, and Krishna says cancel the Indra Puja and do the puja for Govardhan. Now, the Govardhan for Indra's perspective is like an insignificant hill. Say, if there is some big program, and suppose we are invited as the key speaker for that, and suddenly we are told the invitation is cancelled. Okay, what happened? Is the program cancelled? No, the program is not cancelled. We got some other speaker. Say, who is the speaker? And then suppose I consider that I am a big speaker, and somebody who is 20 years my junior, that person is invited as a speaker. Now, I'll feel upset. So, did you do this to humiliate me particularly? If you wanted to have that person speak, don't invite me first. Isn't it? That's understandable. So, what Krishna is doing is actually humiliating Indra. And then, as if that is not, now Indra gets angry and he puts Samvarta clouds to destroy. And then Krishna uses Govardhan. And it is not only that Krishna protects Govardhan despite Indra's best efforts. So Krishna protects the Vrajavasis using Govardhan. Actually, even Govardhan is not hurt. It's like there's severe rains, and sometimes we have umbrella to protect us. Sometimes the rains are so bad that the umbrella itself gets damaged. But here nothing happens at all. Now Indra could have got enraged more and more. It's Krishna, and also Krishna didn't have to make any effort really. He used to this little finger of his left hand. So Krishna, you cannot actually think of anybody being subjected to more humiliation than what Krishna did to Indra. Now, take away the honor that was meant for him, give that honor to someone else who is insignificant in comparison to him, at least from the material perspective, and then expose his powerlessness before the entire world. You can do nothing. So like two wrestlers are fighting, and now both of them are punching. Now some wrestler comes and the other person, the left hand slaps him and it's a knockout blow. Like, tu to mere baaye haath ka khel hai. So I can just destroy you with my left hand. But what Krishna showed to Indra is, tu to mere baaye haath ke chote ungli ka khel hai. So, and now some acharyas go further. It was not even the finger. Ek din man Indra Kumaro naka upar Govardhan dharu. It was not even the little finger. It was the nail of the little finger. So Krishna totally humiliated Indra. But the point is, through this, Indra realized how much of an entitlement mentality I have got. Yes, he being dishonored is, it's not a pleasant thing. But imagine somebody is supposed, there's like a power hungry politician. That politician is supposed to be invited as the chief guest for a particular program. And that invitation is cancelled and somebody else is invited. And the politician says, bomb that program and destroy everyone over there. What kind of atrocious person are you? Isn't it? That is what that is what Indra tried to do. So, but to his credit, Indra did come to his senses. When he exercised all his power, and after exercising all the power, when he realized, I cannot do anything, he did not think, maybe I should do some further yajna and get further power, then I'll destroy the Brajvasis. So he came back to his senses. And then he sought forgiveness from Krishna. So is Krishna provoking Duryodhan? Does that justify all that Duryodhan did? No. See, anger might be there, and anger might lead us to some actions. So, destiny, we could say, can put us in situations. Destiny broadly refers to things beyond our control. They can be situations, they can be Krishna's plan, that can put us into situations that may provoke us. And that's understandable. But, that same provocation does not stay forever. The provocation does end. And when the provocation ends, what do we do after? So that whole anger, the Greeks would say anger like temporary insanity. It's like a spell. We don't know what we are doing. But that it's although it's insanity, it is temporary. And when it ends, when we cool down, what do we do after that? Do we try to further fuel the anger and try to find a way to take revenge? Or we think, what did I do? Did I go too far over here? Do I have to make amends? So both Krishna in one sense provoked both Indra and Duryodhana. And we could say both went too far. Indra tried to destroy the Vrajavasis and Duryodhan tried to destroy the Pandavas. When the gambling match happened, he tried to destroy all of them. And it was a terrible thing. But after that, Indra reformed. Indra went in a different direction. Duryodhan did not reform, he deformed. He became more and more bitter. See, there has to be a sense of proportionality. Yes, okay, you were humiliated. You felt that, as I said in the Mahabharata, there's no mention that Draupadi laughed. And in the Mahabharata, there's no mention that Krishna stopped anyone from laughing. Some other people laughed. The Mahabharata mentions Bhima primarily laughed. Bhima and Duryodhan had a thing going. They had their rivalry. But Yudhishthira immediately stopped. Now, whichever narrative we accept, in the Mahabharata narrative, the focus is more on dharma. In the Bhagavatam narrative, the focus is more on Krishna and Krishna's role. But whichever way it is, the point is that certain situations may come in our life. And those situations may trigger us, may provoke us. And sometimes we may fall. Now, are those situations responsible? Well, maybe not. We can give the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it's possible. See, broadly speaking, for us, there are conditions which may provoke us, and there are conditionings by which we get provoked. So somebody has a tendency for alcoholism, and they go to a corporate dinner where there's lots of alcohol. So conditions and conditionings. Now we could use the conditions can be positive. Let's not get into that. If let's put it this way, the conditions and conditionings, they can be positive in the sense that they can be protective. That means if you are in a temple, for example, That's a protective condition. And we can have protective conditionings. Protective conditionings means, let's say we have grown up in a culture, even when you get angry, you cannot raise your voice toward an elder. That's a culture that we, no matter how we get angry, we are not going to shout at our elders. That's a conditioning. I'm using the word conditioning more in a positive sense over it. It's impressions, samskaras. Now the conditions can be provocative. And the conditionings can also be provocative. So if we consider 4 quadrants in this way, which is the safest quadrant and which is the most dangerous quadrant? Fourth is the safest. Correct. And which is the most dangerous? Second. So now when Duryodhan is in the Maya Sabha, he is in which quadrant? He is in the second quadrant. But it's important to understand that it is not destiny that put him in the second quadrant. He put himself in the second quadrant. Now, he had to go there, but he stayed there unnecessarily. So, ideally speaking, we should try to get ourselves into place where we have positive or protective conditions around us, and we also choose to act in ways by which positive protective conditionings are created within us. So that means if somebody has a tendency to drink too much, or somebody has a tendency to get angry, now if we remind ourselves, if we read stories or hear incidents about how dangerous this can be, how people have ruined their lives because of giving into that condition, then that remembrance, that contemplation, that recollection will create a positive condition, and that will help us. So it is our responsibility that from wherever we are, we try to move ourselves to the 4th quadrant. Now, if we cannot move ourselves to the 4th quadrant, which would be the second best quadrant to be in? Say we can either have positive protective conditions, provocative conditionings, or we can have protective conditionings and we can have provocative conditions. Yes. Now we cannot change our conditionings that fast. So conditions are, you can say these are easier, or you could say this is faster to some extent. We can come in good association faster. We cannot come to purification faster. This is slower. So we could say this is safer, but this is more accessible. If our conditionings themselves have changed, if we have good conditionings, then even if we go into a temptation zone, we won't succumb over there. But right now, if we have certain conditionings, we cannot change them right away. So if somebody has a short temper, like in America is among the few countries where people are allowed to keep guns. If you have a short temper, then it's best that you don't keep a gun with you, isn't it? That's why they say that some people say just ban guns. Some people say at least have mental health checks for people who are going to have guns, so that temperamental people should not have guns. So we need to put ourselves in protective conditions. Even if now, ideally speaking, protective conditions alone will not be enough. We also have to create protective conditionings within us. So when we feel angry, rather than dwelling on how the other person has insulted us, the conditioning, the habit that we create is, okay, whenever I feel angry, let me chant. Let me remember Krishna. Let me hear some kirtan. Let me draw my mind towards something which will calm, not rather than something which will further fuel my anger. So now to conclude this session, I'll make 2 points. Right? So by past karma, we can have provocative conditionings, and by past karma, we may be put in provocative conditions. And when both of these happen at the same time, it is possible that someone may do something terrible. That a good person may also do a bad thing, a terrible thing. And sometimes it is just, it's terrible, but it is understandable. So for example, if we consider Ajamil was a very cultured person. And it was not that he intentionally went to an area where there was some obscenity happening and he would see obscenity. He had gone to the forest to collect firewood for his father's yajna. And there he saw something terrible. So we could say that his being put in that condition was due to past karma. But now we could say everybody has certain level of lust within everyone. So maybe he didn't realize how strong that lust was. So maybe the provocative conditioning also came from past karma. And then he saw that sight. So seeing that and getting agitated by that could be said to be due to past karma. Now when he came back, and still that memory stayed with him, that memory haunted him. And he just couldn't tolerate, he couldn't resist that desire. So he said that, I have to go and I have to be with her. So okay, maybe that, so we could go back over here. So if we are considering the situation, so Ajamil's provocation, that could be said to be destiny. So if we consider, was it destined? Yes or no? So Ajamil's provocation in the sense that provocative side. Provocation, we could say yes. Yeah, he didn't really do anything to get provoked. His provocation was due to destiny. Now the first indulgence, the first fall. Now, was it destiny? Maybe, maybe not. He actually consciously went to her place to be with her. So he was doing something. But as I said, like anger is temporary insanity, lust can be temporary insanity. So, like what Indra did, Indra's attempt to destroy the entire Govardhan, that's like insanity. We could say, okay, that event triggered me and that agitation stayed for a good amount of time. So maybe you can call it destined. But what about after the first indulgence? What did he do? He went further. He rejected his chaste wife. He rejected his parents. He decided, I want to live with her, or I want her to live with me. Now, when he rejected his family, can we say that that is destined? No. That is, you are consciously doing what you are doing. That means if other people are repeatedly telling us, don't do something, and we are going on our way and we see something and we fall, but we go out of our way and do something. So we deliberately go out of our way to get somewhere. Then that cannot be considered destiny. Then rejected his family. Then after that, he became a criminal. Rejecting family is immoral. That may not be criminal. But he became a criminal means nobody will want, if somebody is abandoned their family and is living with a prostitute, that nobody will want such a person to come and do Brahmanical activities for them. Isn't it? Who will want such a person to come and do puja or vivah yagya or bala namakaran samskar? So he lost his profession. And then he had to rob and steal and plunder people. So now his becoming a criminal, that cannot be considered destiny. So basically, when we are provoked, certain actions which are circumstantial, that we are put in those circumstances and we succumb, they can be considered, maybe they are due to destiny. We could say that Ajamil, as soon as he saw that sight, He could have decided. Maybe he could have gone and talk with his father. He could have talked with some peer. This is what happened. I'm feeling like this. What can I do? How can I deal with it? He could have done the same thing after the first indulgence. But not only did he not consult anyone, rather he rejected others' advice. And that cannot be considered destiny. So in general, society, culture, nature creates some boundaries for us. So when we break those boundaries again and again and again, not just once, that is where, so this could be said to be destined, but this is very much on him. This is not, this may be because of past karma, but eventually what he's doing is, it is because of present karma. So in the case of Krishna and Duryodhan, this is the last point I'll make, Krishna exposed the conditionings, the gravity of the conditionings. You have such ego issues. This is how far you can go when you are humiliated. So both of them were exposed. But now Indra, he reformed himself. Duryodhan did not. So Duryodhan's actions are not destined. They are, Krishna provoked him to make him aware of how grave his conditioning is. But rather than recognizing the gravity of the conditioning, he went on with that and kept doing hateful things. And then the same Krishna who was a provoker, Krishna as provoker, initially, that same Krishna was also a pacifier. When did Krishna come as a pacifier? As the Shanti Dut. So in the Maya Sabha, Krishna was the provoker. As the Shanti Dut in the peace mission, in the Kuru Sabha, Krishna was the pacifier. Krishna went out of his way to accommodate Duryodhan. And he said, even if you don't want to give anything to the Pandavas, he said, just give them 5 villages. As a side point, the Pandavas were very united. But still, Krishna did not ask for 1 village for all the Pandavas. He asked for 5 villages. The Pandavas are Kshatriyas and everybody needs their space. A certain amount of space is required. But the point is that Krishna was very, very accommodating over here. So, but Duryodhan rejected that. And this rejection was against the advice of Krishna, was against the advice of the sages, against the advice of his elders, against the advice even of his parents. Dhritarashtra tried to persuade him. Dhritarashtra called Gandhari and tried to persuade him. So when Duryodhan was ruined finally, that ruination was upon him. It was not upon Krishna. He cannot blame that on destiny. So a one-time slip may be said to be because of destiny. But if we are repeatedly putting ourselves in conditions where we'll get provoked, if we are repeatedly fueling the conditionings that are provoking us, then that is up to us. So for us, protection, yes, can destiny put us in situations where even good people do bad things? It's possible. But what can we do about it? We can try to arrange our life in such a way that we live more and more in protective conditions. Even when we have to go for service, we have to go for preaching, we may have to go a little bit into provocative areas, but we are careful. We don't go too far into provocative areas. And simultaneously, we need to be creating protective conditionings. So when we hear about Krishna, when we hear the stories about how the anarthas can destroy us, when we do our sadhana, we are creating protective conditionings. So if we are doing these two things, we are situating us in the protective conditions and creating protective conditionings within us, then we can rest assured that we will be safe. That doesn't mean we may never fall, but even if we fall, it is for such situations that apichet sudaracharo bhajate mam ananya bhav. Sadhureva samantavya samyak vyavasito hi sa. Samyak vyavasito hi sa. That means that person has created protective conditions. That person is fixed in the determination to serve Krishna. And sometimes even such a person may be put in provocative situations and they may fall. But because that impression, that tendency, that habit, that conditioning to serve Krishna is there, they will be restored. So as devotees, we should never, on one side, we, we never should be careless. Careless thinking, I am beyond temptation. At the same time, we should never feel hopeless. Oh, this is so terrible. Maybe there's something wrong with me genetically only. By karma, I am doomed. I can never improve. As devotees, from our side, we can be careful and we can be hopeful. So, hopeful that if I am right now in provocative conditions, Krishna will protect me. If I have provocative conditionings within me, Krishna will remove those conditionings. So, we'll careful in doing our part and hopeful that Krishna will do his part. In this way, when we act, we are careful and hopeful, we will be able to go through this dangerous, treacherous material world and ultimately become purified and changed. So I'll summarize what I discussed today. I discussed 3 main points. We discussed about, the broad question was, can destiny cause fall down? So can destiny make a good person do bad things? So the 3 points we discussed was, first point was about the whole concept we're discussing. So normally good people do good things and bad people do bad things. So good people do good things, bad people do bad things. But it becomes difficult to understand why good people do bad things and then the bad people want to do good things. Is it possible for them to change? So we discussed the divine and demoniac natures. So divine and demoniac, I discussed that these can be understood in 2 ways. That these are regions, that the dark side, the light side, these are regions, and these regions, and they are forces, they are programs. So this corresponds later with the conditions and conditionings. So we have choices within us. So some of us may have more of a divine or more of a demoniac nature from the past, but the choice is always there for us. So then we discussed the idea of provocation. Provocation, how when Krishna provokes, or sometimes we are put in provocative situations by factors beyond our control. So that is, Krishna did that to Duryodhan and Krishna did that to Indra. Both of them. But the point of being put in a provocative situation is what? It is to force us or to jolt us out of denial. That, oh, I don't have any problem. Well, thinking that you have no problem is itself a big problem, isn't it? So it jolts us out of denial. How could I have done something like this? So all of us, we have anger, for example, but we may think there's no big deal. But how far do we go when we get angry? What boundary do we cross? That can help us realize. So both of them did terrible things. But the difference was, after doing that, Indra reformed. So sometimes when God or destiny puts us in provocative situations, that doesn't mean God wants us to fall. God wants us to become aware that you are in trouble. You have to work on yourselves. So Indra reformed, Duryodhan reformed. He continued on his dark track. And then lastly we discussed, so how can we have protection for ourselves? In that connection, we discussed this 4 quadrants, that our conditions and our conditionings. So conditions and conditionings Our conditions can be protective or they can be provocative. And similarly, our conditionings can be protective or provocative. So this is the most dangerous situation. So we might by destiny find ourselves in the quadrant 2. But if we stay in that quadrant, that is upon us. So destiny may put us in 1, put us in 2. But if we choose to go there or we choose to stay there, but if we stay there, then that is up to us. And for that, it is we who are responsible. So that's why our solution is we try to get ourselves to quadrant 4. We can't get ourselves to quadrant 4 where we have positive conditions and conditionings. We at least get ourselves to quadrant 1. Put ourselves protective conditions and then try to create healthy conditionings. To stay safe, we want to be careful that we do our part and we are hopeful, Asha Baddha, that Krishna will do his part. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Are there any questions? Do you have time for questions?
Haribu, you can raise your hand.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Actually, you have said at last the Ajamila concept, Ajamila from Bhagavatam. So, my thing is starting proactive has been due to destiny, and gradually he chose this path due to that addiction or some thought. So, after further addiction, further degradation, how he can take shelter back, or is there any possibility for him to get back?
Yeah, it's the possibility for reform is always there. You see, Ajamil also had some positive protective conditioning. That's how he named his name son as Narayan, and then he called out to Narayan when he saw the Vishnu Dutas, the Yamadutas. So nobody is so far gone that they can never be purified. They can never be restored. That we don't have the power to ever do anything so terrible that Krishna cannot purify us. So we are finite beings, and the good thing about being finite is that we cannot do so many wrongs that the infinite cannot purify us. But we have to cooperate. So start from wherever we can and start doing some small positive things. So, generally speaking, if we consider our urges, so if we consider urge and time, so because of our positive conditionings, provocative conditionings, we may have anger, we may have lust, whatever. But it is not that this is constantly there. So it's like the lust, there are surges. So we have urges and the urges have surges. And when these surges are there, we may be hopeless. We may feel I'm helpless. I cannot do anything. But even if it is true, even if we can't resist our urges, we can still persist between our urges. Between my urges, what am I doing? I'm trying to cover up. I'm trying to deny. I'm trying to pretend that I'm a good person. Or am I actually doing something serious to purify myself? So if we keep persisting between the urges, we start doing something meaningful, take shelter of Krishna, get supportive systems for ourselves, then with time, what will happen is that those urges will become smaller and they will become less frequent. And gradually, we will become purified. Okay?
but this thing can't be lead to seventh offense of holy
Seventh
name.
offense is when we are intentionally doing something wrong, thinking that the holy name will cover it up. But that there's two different things. One is we are pushed toward doing something, we don't want to do it, but we are pushed toward doing something and we are unable to resist it. So they're two different things. Like somebody uh, is an alcoholic and they deliberately keep alcohol with them. So this is not for me. In case some guests come and they don't want, I want to be a good host. Yes, a guest will come and that guest will be your own alcoholism. So if we are keeping arrangements for relapse with ourselves, that means we are creating the conditionings. Creating the conditions where we may fall. But if we're not doing that, then it's easy, it's not upon us. It will decrease with time. Any other questions?
Hare Krishna. So, Rosie, so our conditionings are coming from past life. So can somebody's conditionings be that strong that he cannot choose the present conditions properly? For example, if we take case of Duryodhana and Ravana, they get a lot of choices to make, but somehow they're all the choices, like Duryodhana's all the choices, they took him to Kurukshetra war. And similarly, Ravana's all the choices, he had so many options, he was guided by so many people, but at the end, his all the choices were that he will be killed by Lord Ram. So, do they really have free will when their eternal destiny is already there?
Well, it depends on when we are trying to understand Shastra, what level are we understanding Shastra? I think in a previous session I had mentioned that Shastra can be, stories can be understood at 4 levels. We call it lead. I draw this from Bhaktivinoda Thakur's analysis in Chaitanya Shiksha Amrut and Krishna Samhita. We can look at Shastra at a literal level. Literal level, this is entertaining story. We can look at it at an ethical level. Ethical level, this is right and this is wrong. This person did like this and this was a good decision. This person did like this and that was a bad decision. Then it is allegorical level, where it is symbolic. Like now, Shastra itself is not an allegory, but there are many symbolic things. Like the 6 children of Devaki who were killed, they represent the 6 anarthas. And then there is the devotional level. So when we look at the devotional level, then everything is Krishna's arrangement. That's one way of looking at it. But if we start looking at everything as Krishna's arrangement, it's all Krishna's Leela, then there is nothing for us to learn over. So it depends on what level we are approaching it. So today I was approaching it at an ethical level. So if you see Prabhupada, sometimes the Gita commentary says Arjuna's illusion was arranged by Krishna so that the Gita could be spoken. But in Prabhupada also, in the first and second chapters, approaches at an ethical level. In the first chapter, he says that Arjuna is thoughtful, he's not rushing into actions. That indicates that a reflective person is actually ready to receive the knowledge of the Gita. And the next chapter he talks about Arjuna is in tears. Such tears indicate attachment, they indicate ignorance, they indicate the skin disease. And Krishna's knowledge of the Gita will remove the skin disease. So if Arjuna's illusion is Krishna's arrangement, then why is Prabhupada criticizing Arjuna or speaking negatively about Arjuna, saying that this is attachment, this is skin disease? It's approaching at different levels. So generally, when we want to learn some lessons, we approach scripture at an ethical level. So the way, now, yes, Duryodhan and other Ravana and others, they had done demoniac things, and they would have to get some punishment for that. But does that mean that it has to be a war in which millions and millions of people have to be killed? Can there be some other way they can get the punishment, that they can get atonement? It might have been possible. Now, even if we put those Leela pastimes separately, for us, we always have choice. The range of choice may be limited, but the choice within that range is there. Somebody is an alcoholic, I cannot give up drinking. Okay, maybe it is true. But you can decide whether you take 2 drinks or 20 drinks. Can somebody say that I have no free will how much I drink? Now, that I drink, I can say I don't have control over it. But how much you drink, you have some control. So destiny may determine the range of choices. But destiny itself doesn't determine our specific choices. So for a person like Duryodhan, to live like an ascetic, to live in Brahminical simplicity, that might have been impossible. He would need some royal comfort. But Krishna never told him, you did so many bad things to the Pandavas, therefore you go and live in the forest. That's the only way I'll let you survive. Krishna said, you can have a kingdom. You can live in royal prosperity. But don't crave for the Pandavas' kingdom. Give them their half of it. So, destiny may control the range of choices we have, but destiny doesn't control specific choices within that range. And that's why within the range, we can make good choices and create a brighter future for ourselves. Okay?
So, Prabhuji, this range of choices, it depends on what? Matlab our past karma.
Yeah, of
Now,
course.
for example, Ajamil is there. If we see the past life of Ajamil, so he was a brahmachari and he was cursed by a Kanya. That in next life, I will be the reason for you'll fall down. Right. So now Ajamil has many choices, but due to that curse, it was destined that he has to fall down in this way.
Well, okay, maybe I have not heard of that story. I don't know the reference for it. But even if it is true, you fall down. How far do you fall down? That is up to him. So maybe the first sight and the first indulgence, that's up to him. But can you say you're destined to reject your wife, to reject your parents? No, you cannot say that. We are not like programmed puppets. We do have free will. So curses may influence us in some ways to some degree. But the curses don't determine lifelong actions forever. So let's say that, as I said, the range may be determined, but the specific choices within them are up to us. So, for example, somebody may say that, by destiny, I have so much conditioning that I cannot be a brahmachari. I have to be a grahastha. Okay, you can say that both are valid ashrams. But somebody says, I cannot be a grahastha, I will have illicit sex with many partners. And that is just my destiny. No, that is basic human morality. No, so everybody will have to live within certain boundaries. Now, the specific boundaries may vary. Now, if somebody says my conditioning is such that by my conditioning, I have to kill one person every day. Can you say that? No, there are actual psychopath people who they have like an itch. They get a perverse joy in killing people. Then such a person will have to be stopped by society. The person have to be put in jail, some other person may have to be killed themselves. So conditionings within a particular range may push us. But if they're pushing us beyond that, then either by force we have to stop ourselves or society will stop us. Okay. So thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Jai Gaur Premanande. So, just a quick announcement. I have written a few books. This is Gita for the CEO. It explains Bhagavad Gita from a practical corporate perspective. Like I was drawing some simple diagrams, there are illustrations explaining the concepts. The Gita is presented as a conversation. Srila Prabhupada wanted the Gita's wisdom to be spread far and wide. So, this is a way for people who may not be able to directly connect with the Bhagavad Gita. They can connect with the Bhagavad Gita, so seeing how it's applicable in corporate life. That can inspire them to dive deeper into more direct presentations of the Bhagavad Gita. It's not only for CEOs. Everybody ultimately has to be a CEO of their own life. This is a calendar with 365 quotes inspired by the Bhagavad Gita. Life determines our problem. We determine their size. And so, mind your mind before you mind anyone else's mind. It's like that there are quotes. And this is my latest book, Prayers Inspired by Bhagavad Gita. This has 2-page reflection, one beautiful ditty of Krishna. Then there is one sentence devotional affirmation. Then I have taken the Gita's verses and translated them into English poetry that we can feel an emotional connect. And then there is a 1-page prayer. So like that there are 122 prayers based on the first 6 chapters. and all the prayers are summarized in a very accessible table of contents. So many devotees have told me that reading one prayer before the chanting help them to calm and center their mind. And also there are prayers for various occasions, prayers when we are feeling lonely and misunderstood, prayers when we're feeling lost and directionless in our life, prayers when we are feeling our desires becoming wild and uncontrollable, prayers when we are feeling very spiritually dry and far away from Krishna. So whatever be our particular emotional mood, there are prayers for that. So all these books are available, and I'll be here for some time in case you want me to answer any questions or sign the books. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So the books are available here at the courtyard. In the courtyard, there's a bookstall table. So devotees can collect. Prabhuji is here for the books. And the next class, Prabhuji, continuation to this topic of Krishna's Leela will continue in the Pritivardhanam class at 11 o'clock in Dwarkapuri Hall. So all the devotees can join on time. We are very thankful to Prabhuji by once chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.